Students, welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian and I'm streaming to you from Hungary here in Central Europe. I hope everybody is having a good weekend so far and managing with the current situation in the world where a lot of us are confined to our homes. Today we are focusing on IELTS speaking section part 3, the more challenging specific questions related to the topic of part 2. Hi, Kevin Bui. Hi, Kamal. Hi, Victor, Flower Sun, Ranveer, and our members who have joined into the class. While we wait for some more of your peers, this lesson is presented to you by aehelp.com. For academic IELTS and English help, check us out at aehelp.com and join our premium course. For general IELTS, check us out at gieltshelp.com. On both of our websites, we have loads and loads of great materials for you. I'll quickly show you those. This is our academic website here with the blue background. You can click that big red button to join the premium package, get access to video lessons, interactive courses, and fully developed exams. This is the General IELTS website here with the green background. You can click that big red button to join the premium package there. Students, you can also download and link your apps to your web accounts. Academic IELTS help to aehelp.com, and General IELTS help, you can link that to gieltshelp.com. If you have questions or would like to send a comment, you can do that. Just email me, adrian@aehelp.com, and I will gladly respond to your inquiries. All right, students, so we had speaking part 2 a little bit earlier, 30 minutes ago. We finished that class. Now we have speaking part 3, and this is a speaking class, so make sure to speak and repeat. Focus on giving full sentence answers. Use the question to help you give better answers. And work hard to include examples and make connections to part 2. Okay, so that can really help to improve your overall speaking score. Now, we just had our speaking part 2 class, which was about a place where you can go to be safe. We talked about a sailboat, the 7 seas. So here's a tip. Make connections among part 3 questions and your part 2 response to get even better band scores. All right, so let's start off. The examiner will say that is the end of part 2. Now we will continue with part 3. For part 3, I will ask you some more questions related to the topic of part 2. Let's talk about dangerous circumstances, so dangerous situations. What types of threats are the most likely these days for people around the globe? Give me a nice full sentence answer for this question. So what types of threats are the most likely these days for people around the globe? And there's no perfect answer. There are many possible answers. Your goal is to think about answers that are believable, acceptable, creative, expressive. Okay? Firdavs Nabiev says, in my opinion, there are numerous dangers that could happen, like a pandemic and World War III. Why? Why do you think, Firdavs, that there could be a pandemic? Why do you think there could be a World War III? Remember, students, give reasons for your answers as well, to be more fluent and to provide more complex answers. All right? Karanveer says, people these days are vulnerable to contagious diseases like flu and the common cold. Why, Karen? Why are we more susceptible these days than in the past? Okay, Elena says, I would say that the global pandemic, COVID-19, is the main threat for humanity. The main problem with the threat is we don't know how to overcome the virus. Okay, Elena, good. So you're putting a bit of explanation in there that we don't know how to defeat this invisible threat. Nafosat Tursundziayeva says, nowadays people can suffer from viruses as our climate and nature have been damaged so badly. Nafosat, good. So you're giving reasons, and you can throw in the example like the COVID-19 pandemic that we're dealing with. Okay. Azar Udin says, nowadays, one word, Azar, I guess the coronavirus infection is a dangerous circumstance. Students, plural. When the noun in the question is a plural, you have to give at least a couple of answers. So at least two. If you only give one, you're going to lose marks, okay? So when the question noun is plural, like threats, okay, you should give at least a couple of answers. Okay. All right. So I believe the most present dangers for humanity these days are either a pandemic like the COVID-19 crisis we are dealing with at the moment, as well as famine and starvation, because the world population has ballooned to over 8 billion people, and we have decimated our environment. So these threats have become more prevalent. There we go. All right, students. So again, threats means plural. You have to give at least two. Remember, your goal is answer, explain, example. Not necessarily in that order, but you should include those. Include real-life contexts as well. Ashish Beneval says, in my opinion, there is a lot of dangerous threats like global warming is increasing rapidly, which can cause difficulties for existence of humans and animals as well. Like what, Ashish? Be direct, be clear. Here we go, students. Speak and repeat. Practice questions as well as answers. What types of threats are the most likely these days for people around the globe? I believe the most present dangers for humanity these days are either a pandemic, like the COVID-19 crisis we're dealing with at the moment, as well as famine and starvation, because the world population has ballooned to over 8 billion people, and we have decimated our environment. So these threats have become more prevalent, okay? Prevalent means present and obvious, okay? Notice the example of the COVID-19 crisis. I'm using a correlative marker, either or, okay? These types of complex answers will get you the high band scores. One more time, students, repeat. If you have good English or upper intermediate advanced English, repeat without reading. I believe the most present dangers for humanity these days are either a pandemic like the COVID-19 crisis we're dealing with at the moment, or a famine and starvation because the world population has ballooned to over 8 billion people and we have decimated our environment. So these threats have become more prevalent. All right, that's what you need to do for these high band scores. Now, here is the next question. Which threats do people likely not need to worry about? Okay, so follow-up question. All right, this is very common in part 3. Be ready for it. Which threats do people likely not need to worry about? Give me a nice full sentence for this one. Decimated is a synonym, Renew, and others asking, for destroyed. Destroyed. Decimate, to destroy. Okay. All right. Let's see what you come up with. For the follow-up, Kevin Bowie says, I think individuals should not be panicked in the face of crisis reported by less credible news channels, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic, when they deliberately propagate false information. Falsehood, Kevin? Though I read that these sites, to update, I always take their account with a pinch of salt. Yeah, with a grain of salt. Maybe it's pinch in the UK. In Canada, we say with a grain of salt. Kevin Bowie, not pinch of salt, but grain of salt. Charlie says, I don't think people need to worry about threats like floods, shortage of food, heavy snowfall, or even an earthquake, because these threats become so common that people know very well how to handle them. Okay, Charlie, great. That's a better answer. So Kevin, I think you're a little bit off topic. Charlie's a little bit more on topic. And good, Charlie, it's arguable what you're saying, but there is no right and wrong on the IELTS as long as it's believable. You can make that argument, Charlie. Good job. Elena says the less serious threats are traditional diseases like the common flu, diabetes, hypertension, which are common these days. People don't need to worry much about these at all. At least they're not life-threatening, and there are medications to treat them. Okay, Elena, nice. I colored it a little bit with some vocabulary. Pachu Yadav says, well, threats like migration and cyberbullying, people likely need not worry about because the former gives good results in the future and the later can be resolved by securing strong passwords and informing the authentic internet provider. Okay, Pachu, good. Nice explanation. Ranveer Singh says there are numerous diseases nowadays which individuals do not need to worry about, such as the chicken pox. Okay, good. Rajveer says, in my opinion, individuals need not worry about seasonal flus as well as aftershocks of an earthquake, as advanced vaccines and smart construction has made it possible to deal with these former threats. Good, Rajveer. Good. All right. Well, as opposed to thousands of years ago, I don't think people nowadays need to concern themselves much about animal attacks, as humans have clearly come out on top of the food chain. Also, many illnesses like chickenpox and the common flu, which were life-threatening in the past, are no longer a major threat. All right. Good job, everyone. Let's keep rocking and rolling. Repeat after me. Remember, practice questions as well as answers. One of the big missing elements in students' study is they don't focus on questions enough. All right, so repeat after me. Which threats do people likely not need to worry about? Well, as opposed to thousands of years ago, I don't think people nowadays need to concern themselves much about animal attacks, as humans have clearly come out on top of the food chain. Also, many illnesses like chickenpox and the common flu, which were life-threatening in the past, are no longer a major threat. Okay. Next question. And students, I know that a lot of you are working really hard to give your answers in the chat. I will do my best to look at answers from different students for different questions. So just keep going, okay? One of the biggest tricks to learning English quickly and effectively is don't worry about what's happening around you. Just express yourself. Use your English, speak, write, listen. Okay? Here we go. How can governments and society minimize the possibility of dangerous situations happening? Okay? So, how can governments and society minimize the possibility of dangerous situations happening? Here we go. Seni Surani says to face diseases, plagues, the governments and society have prepared themselves by giving vaccines and other preventative actions like cleaning and sanitizing public places. Very good, Seni. Nice vocabulary. Careful a little bit with the grammar, but overall quite good, Seni. Nice long answer. Okay? Again, complex answers, explanations with examples will get you the highest band scores. Okay? Nahyan bin Nur says the government and society have to make people aware of the danger. If people don't obey the rules and regulations of the government, then intervention won't work, such as social distancing with the COVID-19. If people continue to contact each other and spread the contagion, then it won't be effective. So governments must inform and enforce these rules. Right, Nahyan? Finish with that example. Otherwise, a really nice start. All right. Jamolidin Shodiryonov says, I do believe that some kind of tax should be legalized to minimize danger, whereby the government collects money and uses that money for preventative measures, such as information channels, vaccines, and shelters or places of refuge, as we discussed in part 2. Again, remember, students, make connections to part 2. So if many of you saw the last class with part 2, where we talked about our safe place is a sailboat where we can escape from the public, you should make connections to that. In this question and answer, you could say that governments and societies could build safe havens where people can go to seek refuge in case of a crisis. Okay, so make the connections to part 2. I started with that suggestion, and I don't see too many people taking it into consideration. Okay, Rimsha says, all right, it's a different question. I see you're communicating with someone, Rimsha. Kamal Sharma says, well, the population is in a booming stage, so people need more space for shelter and food. Therefore, constructing buildings without completion. This may lead to problems. All right, Kamal, I don't really get where you're going with it. Make sure that when you have an idea, it's as clear for your listener as it is in your own mind. Okay? Abhishek, our member, says, in my opinion, the government and society should work together with medical experts in situations like the current COVID-19 pandemic to control fatality rate and the infection. All right. It's a good start, Abhishek, but don't just focus on that. Here we go. So I think that authorities work really hard, students, to paraphrase your subject nouns. So if you can think of the word authorities instead of government, and community instead of society, and decrease instead of minimize, the more you can paraphrase the question in your answer, the better your band score, because you're pushing your fluency score up, up, and away. Okay, so do that. So I think that authorities and communities must work together, stay informed, and be well prepared to decrease the impact of harmful circumstances. This can include building safe havens where individuals can seek refuge away from harm, such as bunkers or even boats, as I had referred to in part 2. Okay, so make that connection. Paraphrase, boost your score. Here we go. Repeat after me. How can governments and society minimize the possibility of dangerous situations happening? I think that authorities and communities must work together, stay informed, and be well prepared to decrease the impact. Now let's make sure we're answering this question. And occurrence of harmful circumstances. The reason I'm adding the word occurrence here is because, double C, double R, is because situations happening. So we're preventing these situations, okay? This can include building safe havens where individuals can seek refuge away from harm, such as bunkers or even boats, as I had referred to in part 2. Okay, so make those connections. All right, now the follow-up question. Again, always these follow-up questions, so be prepared for these. Does this always work? Why or why not? Why or why not? Does this always work? Why or why not? Give me a nice full sentence answer for this one. Okay, Nadia Khalil for the previous one says, well, currently governments in our country have implemented some strategies like lockdown, providing masks and sanitizers, as well as electing spray wagons on the main roads, as in Turkey, to avoid infection and save lives. Nadia Khalil, good. You mentioned Turkey later on, which is fantastic. Mentioned in the beginning, the government of Turkey has implemented some. Okay? So instead of saying my country, students, actually name your country. Be more specific. Okay? Kevin Bowie says, for the most part, yes, because by demonstrating integrity and resolution, national leaders can compel the public to follow and avert defiant attitudes, thereby optimizing the chances of positive outcomes. However, if the government is overtly conservative and abusing their power, some strategies could be doomed to failure and fail to prevent precarious situations. Very nice. Okay, I love the lexical resource that you're bringing to the lessons, Kevin. It's fantastic. Violet says, well, I don't think that it's always going to work because sometimes we can even make it worse when we don't know if we have an infection or not. So it's not a good idea necessarily to ride a boat to an island, as I had mentioned in part 2, if we bring contamination on board the ship. Good, Violet. I like how you're making the connection to part 2. Nicely done. All right. Pavan says, when it comes to a pandemic such as the COVID-19, it's essential for the government to enforce social distancing to isolate infected people. If not, these can go out of control. Pavan, make sure you answer the question, does it always work? So students, careful not to jump ahead of the question. So always answer the question first, okay? Always answer the question before you go into explanations and examples. One common mistake that I see is students will start to speak and they'll start with an explanation. So they'll start explaining the answer, but they don't actually answer the question. And of course, in the examiner's head, they're going, okay, so what's your answer? Does it work or doesn't it work? I guess from your explanation that it doesn't always work, but I shouldn't be guessing, okay? So these measures, although highly effective, do not work 100% of the time to avert a major threat. For instance, there is no way to predict or stop a massive meteor from impacting the planet, and I'm not sure that being on a sailboat would be of much use in such a situation either. Okay? All right. So, always answer the question. Repeat after me. Does this always work? Why or why not? These measures, although highly effective, do not work 100% of the time to avert a major threat. For instance, there's no way to predict or stop a massive meteor from impacting the planet, and I'm not sure that being on a sailboat would be of much use in such a situation either. All right? Again, connecting to part 2, doing a lot of paraphrasing, using a wide range of vocabulary, switching up my grammar, okay? Using an additive clause here. These measures, although highly effective, do not work 100% of the time. Odina says, it really depends. In spite of government's efforts to keep society safe, people in the country may not follow quarantine rules or other mandates. So I don't think these measures are 100% foolproof. Okay, all right, good. Okay, let's go to the next set of questions. So we're doing a great job and we're showing good fluency. The examiner feels confident that you are a Band 8, Band 9 student. And so they go into another topic, which is let's talk about survival in a crisis. Where are some common places that people may escape to for safe refuge? Give me some nice answers for this one. And again, students, I promise I will look at different answers from different students. And if I feel that I've done a good job of that, I'll come back to students who have answered as well. So keep going, members, students, keep going. Okay. Give me some good answers here. All right. Gamer King, keep it English, please. If you want to chat in other languages, please do it somewhere else, okay? Or through some social media. Charlie says, well, I had already talked about in part 2 that a sailboat is one of the places people can choose during a crisis. Besides that, people can go to a rural area in nature to keep quarantine. Charlie, careful with some of your words. Crisis is a noun, so you don't need to use it as an adjective during a crisis. Okay. And in lap of nature, I think you're translating that from another language, so careful with that. Elena says people can find safe haven such as on a ship that I mentioned earlier. Other than that, they can hide themselves in isolated places like the countryside, at least until the curve goes flat. What curve are you talking about, Elena? Are you talking about the pandemic and the increase of illness? You have to make that clear. Again, students, the examiner is an alien. They don't know what you know. Just because we have flattened the curve in pop culture right now, it doesn't mean that you can just use that without explanation. So really careful, students, with these expressions, okay? Be clear. And Elena, careful with repetition. Safe haven, safe place. You only need one, okay? It's the same concept. Shirojidin says, well, I think such situations like the COVID-19 pandemic, the safest place is at home. But if there's climate dangers, people should leave their home and go to some special camps or safe areas further north or further south, right, Shirojidin? Because close to the equator, it might get extremely hot. Kamal Sharma says, well, as I mentioned before about the sailboat, personally, I feel a safe sailboat is one of the safest places during a crisis on the basis of the necessities provided on the ship. Okay, Kamal, not bad, but don't get lost on that one idea. So it's good to make the connection, absolutely. Thumbs up. Plural. So I said this before with threats. If the noun is plural, you need to give at least two. Okay, at least two. All right. Okay, so a couple of locations that come to mind immediately are on board a boat, as I had previously mentioned, as well as in underground bunkers or shelters hidden in the mountains. Of course, all of these places have in common social isolation away from the masses. In fact, this is what is being suggested now by social distancing during this the current pandemic. Okay. So mention at least two places, students, at least two places. Let's talk about survival in a crisis. Where are some common places that people may escape to for safe refuge? A couple of locations that come to mind immediately are on board a boat, as I had previously mentioned, as well as in underground bunkers or shelters hidden in the mountains. Of course, all of these places have in common social isolation away from the masses. In fact, this is what is being suggested now by social distancing during the current pandemic. Let's make it clear, to stay at home and away from people. All right. Next question. Which of these is the safest and why? Give me a nice full sentence answer for this one. Which of these is the safest and why? Seni says the safest place is hospitals, since there are plenty of doctors and paramedics who are ready to help victims from physical injuries and illnesses. Sure, Seni, that's a good explanation and answer. Okay, we could argue it because there's obviously going to be a lot of ill people in hospitals as well, but it doesn't matter. You don't have to have the perfect answer in the IELTS. You just have to have a good answer. Okay. Give me some more answers. Which of these is the safest? Don't overthink it. So again, the IELTS is not here to judge your book knowledge or to examine your life experiences. It's simply there to evaluate your English and communication skills. So don't overthink your answers. Don't be like, well, is a sailboat better than a bunker? Or something in the mountains is better, or maybe just staying at home is better. So don't do that, okay? Don't start contemplating on the answer for too long. If you take 3-4 seconds, that's okay, but get your answer out. Be fluent, okay? So Sneksha says public gardens will be the safest in case of earthquakes. Okay, so specifically to earthquakes, why, Sneha? Why? Because there are no falling objects, for example. You have to explain that. Okay? All right. Score Hero 71 says, I believe the safest place to be are shelters hidden in the mountains because the environment is great and the air is fresh. Very good, Score Hero 71. You're not overthinking it. You're just giving an answer. It's fantastic. Okay. I like it. Rimshaw says, if a simple and small layout with a normal entrance exists may be sufficient, there should be no possibility of anybody being cut off by smoke or flames before they can make their escape. So what kind of a place is that, Rimshaw, that you think is the safest? Like a small shelter with a couple of exits? Okay, you have to be a little bit clearer. I think you're jumping to the explanation before giving the answer. Preeti Yogi says, I think a sailboat is the safest than any other because staying there not only keeps you safe from infected people, but we can enjoy it as there are many modern facilities. Okay, Preeti, not bad. I don't think we're talking about enjoyment here. We're talking about safety. So don't go off topic. Okay. Rajveer says, as I had mentioned, boarding a sailboat is the safest, especially when it comes to sustenance facilities like food and shelter, as well as healthcare like doctors and medicine for common diseases. This is the reason I choose to board the Seven Seas sailboat. Good, Rajveer. Okay, yeah. So I still believe that the most safe and secure place to be in general during a crisis is a sailboat, because it not only provides isolation, but it is also mobile, meaning that if danger appears, then it is possible to keep moving. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for a bunker in the mountains. Also, the sea contains more food and life sustenance than the forest. All right. So, repeat after me. Which of these is the safest and why? I still believe that the most safe and secure place to be in general during a crisis is a sailboat because it not only provides isolation, but it is also mobile, meaning that if danger appears, then it is possible to keep moving. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for a bunker in the mountains. Although also the sea contains more food and life sustenance than the forest. All right, so notice some of the natural expressions here. Using a correlative conjunction not only provides isolation, but also mobile. So they like to hear these kinds of correlative conjunctions on the IELTS to emphasize language. The same cannot be said is a really nice natural English expression. The same cannot be said for, okay? You will commonly hear this expression used among native English speakers. The same cannot be said for this. It's a clear, effective way to compare, okay? All right, so again, answers that will get you the high band scores, usually 2-3 sentences, staying on topic, targeting the question, making connections. Okay? All right. Next question. How has technology been used to increase the security of shelters in emergency situations? So getting into even more detailed questions. Now, students, if you're a band 7 or higher, then don't be surprised if you start to get some fairly unique and really detailed questions. That's because the examiner is trying to see whether you're a band 7 or a band 8 or a band 9 level student. Sometimes students or candidates that score band 9 on the IELTS, they tell me after, like, whoa, I got a couple of really weird questions near the end. And the reason why is because the examiner is asking some very unusual questions to see, can the candidate still understand this and can they still respond in a clear and coherent way? So if you're getting some really weird questions near the end, and you've been fluent, that's a good hint that you're working towards a high band score. Okay, so how has technology been used to increase the security of shelters in emergency situations? Give me a nice full sentence answer for this one. So Charlie says technology has been used drastically in order to increase the safety of people. Like in Israel, the entire country is covered by an iron dome where if the enemy triggers a rocket, it is destroyed. Okay, Charlie, all right. I think it's a little bit off topic. So increasing the safety of shelters. Renew Sharma says technology has made life more convenient. I think the latest technology helps people to stay secure at home, such as earthquake prevention techniques that are used while building houses. Very nice, Renew. So steel and concrete buildings using modern materials and building techniques. Yeah, very good. Okay, that's a good answer. Pachu says, technology has played a great role to increase the security of shelters during emergency situations. as technology provides news and notification to become aware through social media. Okay, good, Pachu, it's a great start. Arpan Maan says, Nur Octave, firstly, you try at least learn 20 to 40 words daily. Remember the word, you can write words again and again, then you definitely improve your vocabulary. Arpan, thank you for the suggestion. The better way to learn vocabulary, students, is not just by repetition, because that doesn't really help you retain and use words, but it's important to put words into context. So when you learn a new word, create an example sentence with that word that includes you and is interesting for you. Okay. Nafosat says, to provide an increasing safety in difficult circumstances, technology has been implemented like drones to observe faraway distances, let's say in a pandemic. Okay, Nafosat, good. I like that answer. Elena says technology like the internet, social media, and even mobile phone GPS have been used to increase the security of shelters in emergency situations. Okay. Like I can call a person or talk about my difficult situation over the phone. Sure. Okay. So technology has been implemented. Here's a crowd favorite, so why not use it? In a plethora of ways to provide greater security in emergency situations, such as the application of modern building materials like steel and concrete, as well as observational gadgets like closed circuit cameras found in banks. Okay, sure. So repeat after me. How has technology been used to increase the security of shelters in emergency situations? Great job, students that use the present perfect passive. Technology being used. I saw that many of you realized, aha, wait a second, this question is present perfect passive, so I need to show that in my answer. Technology has been implemented in a plethora of ways to provide greater security in emergency situations, such as the application of modern building materials like steel and concrete, as well as observational gadgets like closed circuit cameras found in banks. All right, students, we're going to stop there for today. You can try these follow-up and next questions on your own. What kinds of technology might we see in the future for this purpose? What items are good to prepare in case of emergency, and why? Students, if you want to see lots and lots of videos, example speaking interviews with no advertising, in high quality, organized with lessons, practice exams, join our premium package at aehelp.com for academic English and gieltshelp.com for general. It's definitely worth the few dollars to get those. We make our price very competitive because we want to help as many of you as possible around the world. So check us out there and join our thousands and thousands of students who have improved their band scores and gotten the results they need on the exam. Fantastic participation by everyone. Hats off to all of you. A lot of great vocabulary and answers. I will be back next week on Wednesday with some more live lessons. I will post the schedule for next week's live classes later today, so make sure to check on the channel for that. Much love to all of you. Remember, you're all brilliant, beautiful people. Stay safe. Stay at home if you don't need to go out. Bye for now. See you next week.